Hey everybody. Before we begin with today's episode, there's two things I gotta talk about. First up, I made a goof in my last episode. I was the only one who caught it. So, you can kind of expect what critics had to say about this movie. I think my favorite of these has to come from The New Yorker.
Go!
Yeah, that was an awkward flub that slipped by the radar. When I was doing my research for the last episode, I was looking through my History of King Kong book. I came across that review, and I thought it said New Yorker instead of New York Times. It also doesn't help when you're typing these things up at 3 a.m. in the morning and don't double check, so I'm sorry. Also, second, in order to allow extra research time for whatever movie becomes the next vaulting episode from the results of the tiebreaker poll, I decided to postpone that for the next episode and instead do a Patreon request. Returning once again to the stage front and center is Andy Smith. With his continuing patronage on my Patreon page, he was able to get endless requests for whatever movies he would love to see placed right here on the show. One person at a time, given how we have a multitude of folks in front, but, you know. Regardless, I would like to not only thank him for his continuing patronage, but also the choice of flick he had for this one. It's been long overdue for a retrospective review, and what better time to examine it but now. So, thank you. If you just want to be like him and get on the endless requests deal, it only takes $5. Go to my Patreon page, make a donation, and I'll see if I can squeeze it in somewhere in the near future. Might be a bit of a long list, but I'll see what I can do. Regardless, what has Andy picked for us today? Well, no doubt about it, it is a classic from the Disney collection that I'm certain will ring a bell. What's that ringing going from?
No confusion, just move right. Oh yeah. Solving mysteries with nothing to lose. Not to believe you without any clues. There's only so much one man can do. Oh yeah. Only solution. Jump up and down. I just wanna hear. Only solution. Only won't be long. It won't take too long. Only solution. Jump up and down. I just wanna hear. Logical solutions. Clear visions. Clear visions.
Walt Disney Animation was at the top of the world in the 1990s. Their fairy tale, fantasy-themed animated movies were good, wholesome, family-friendly affair that anyone or someone could connect with. The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, and let's not forget, The Rescuers Down Under. Almost anyone growing up at that time had any of these movies in their home video collection. You had songs and great animation for the kids to marvel at, while parents could just sit back, relax, and appreciate the mature themes that were beautifully, perfectly balanced for a G rating. But, in the principle of what must come up, there's always going to be that one movie that's going to bring everything down.
Pocahontas.
Okay, I'm actually half joking here. But granted, Pocahontas was a decent box office success, yet the critical and audience reception was pretty mixed. Personally, I don't think it's a bad movie, but that's besides the point. Because the next Disney feature that was on their roster to be their big animated blockbuster was hopefully the one that would slightly bring them out of this little tiny slump. Would they be joyous? Or would they be damned? In hindsight, The Hunchback of Notre was probably not the best direction to go in. After taking so many well-known fairy tales and turning them into big hits, it felt like a pure left turn taking Victor Hugo's novel about corrupt power and turning it into a family-friendly fantasy flick. Still, it was a bold move nonetheless. The idea came about when then studio chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg was proposed this possibility while he was still working with Disney. He summoned Beauty and the Beast directors Gary Tuesdale and Kirk Wise to work on the project, and probably for the best, given they were trying to do an adaptation of the Greek myth involving Orpheus and Eurydice, with humpback whales. Development started around 1983 with asking the simple question, how would they adapt Victor Hugo's story? The crew did analyze every page and tried to respect the major story beats while making necessary changes when needed. Once Tab Murphy was brought on to write the screenplay, it was decided to focus more on the Hunchback himself to be the story's center, which was the staple of many live-action adaptations. Producer Don Hahn and the two directors felt a thematic approach would be more beneficial than a literal take. Obviously, for a dark tale about the church system and the characters within, it would be better to focus on the characters. Instead of having 90% of the characters get killed off, some of them would live, or others would be combined with some others altogether. The novel was already complex enough, so it was best to keep the focus here simple. But does it make a solid transition from script to screen? Well, let's start with the major item of concern here. It's an adaptation. Clearly, liberties are going to be taken. Characters, elements, and plot devices are going to be changed around for the sake of story and tone. In fact, if you want to know why this is a bit tricky to adapt for a family-friendly audience, let me put it like this. They were taking a novel written by the leader of the 19th century French Romantic movement and turning it into an animated, fantasy, family-friendly flick. Stuffing that into a sausage grinder is not easy as you think. It's almost like if, say, if Stuart Gordon of Reanimator fame took a shot at doing Edgar Allan Poe.
The Spanish Inquisition, a time when religion was fear.
There is one faith, and all else is sin.
She was an angel of light who would tear his world of torture apart.
You love me.
The pit and the pendulum.
Huh. I honestly forgot that was a thing. Oh well. Bring forth the animated religious undertones. The first thing I should mention with any animated feature is that the hand-drawn animation here is gorgeous. Probably the best in the Disney 1990s Renaissance era. It's clear why they wanted to adapt a novel set in a grand setting to show off how capable they are to make a grand-scale feature in 2D animation. To compare, you have the village from Beauty and the Beast with pastel colors, and a small collection of characters to liven up the scene. In Hunchback, you had an entire city that provided many open opportunities and challenges for animation to be utilized for. The swooping shots of Notre Dame almost feel like a callback to the multiplane camera effects of the past Disney films of the 30s and 40s. And there is never a moment when you feel like Notre Dame is empty. It's always busy, and the crowd scenes elevate the song or action scenes. Well, unless you look too close and see the soulless CGI background characters they had to make. Yeah, as good as this looks on a big HD screen, that is one special effect that's not held up well. I admire the ambition to make big crowds, and this computer effect would thankfully be perfected later on. But it doesn't help when you look into the dead eyes of a near-motionless character that sometimes acts like they're too close to having a stroke. Still, props to art director Dave Gotts for translating Notre Dame for an animated setting. It easily fits the visual depiction of Victor Hugo's view as seeing the streets as hell and the cathedral as a stairway to heaven. And given the animators visit the French city, you can tell they're able to take in the Gothic architecture to give Notre Dame its own personality and... Wait a minute. Is that a satellite dish in 1480s France? You know what? I wonder what kind of television they would watch in medieval France, the more I think about it. Welcome back, one and all. We are still live from Remulac, France, and Beldar has not narfled Garthok yet. This is the 8th hour, and right now he is completely struggling. He has no idea where the beast could be, moving or slaying. Oh, right in the eye! Oh, boy, that's gotta hurt. I hope that Garthok has clear eye on standby. This could last for hours, folks. Never's there been such tediousness since the moons of Meeps our drag race. Doesn't surprise me in the least. Of course, when adapting a complex novel for family film, some things have to change. I think producer Don Hahn said it best, that when making a feature inspired by one's work, you gotta respect what is important from the source. That's reflected in two of our leads, the hunchback Quasimodo and the villainous Frollo. In the novel, Quasimodo was literally left on the doorstep of the church and was taken by the Archdeacon Frollo. As time passes, Frollo uses his hunchback assistant as a goon, but his deformed sidekick has a change of heart as the story progresses. In Disney's take, a lot of that gets revamped. Frollo is a judge and reluctantly takes in baby Quasimodo after a quick guilt trip from killing the child's mother.
The angels are coming for you, but listen, your life could depend on this. Don't blink. Don't even blink. Blink and you're dead. They are fast, faster than you could believe. Don't turn your back. Don't look away, and don't blink.
The opening sequence alone sets up the dark themes at play, from faith versus one's inner judgment, to foreshadowing topics that appear later on, like genocide. It's operatic, and it gives a beautiful tease of what's to come. The character Quasimodo also gets an update from the novel as well. A lot of the horror facial features were toned down so he wouldn't be too gruesome for a fantasy-style film. In a nutshell, it's less Lon Chaney and more Charles Laughton. The design alone is unique, but not too horrifying. Even if Quasimodo looks deformed, the body language and vocal performance help bring out his sympathy more. I even like how at times he has acrobatic moves almost akin to the Lon Chaney depiction. Tom Hulse does the voice work, and he's surprisingly good. There's a tinge of kindness in his delivery that helps the viewer pity him. It's interesting given right off the bat the producers wanted a voice that sounded innocent and less handsome.
All this room to yourself?
Well, it's not just me. There's the gargoyles, and of course the bells.
I can only imagine how that could have been if they had a sexy voice coming out of this guy.
But there's no way out. There's soldiers at every door.
I can't fly. I can only glide on currents of wind. There are none strong enough here to lift us back up.
And major bonus for Hulse having a good singing voice, which was also important for the film. Opposite to that is his teacher and surrogate father, Judge Frollo, voiced by Tony Jay. In a long line of Disney villains, this has to be one of their best. Much like in the Victor Hugo novel, Frollo is constantly battling his own personal views and inner emotion. He feels what he is doing is for the greater good, when it's really to satisfy his hunger for power and prejudice against other races.
I have been taking care of the gypsies, one by one. And yet, for all my success, they have thrived.
What are we going to do about it, sir?
I know some diehard enthusiasts of the novel tend to detest this adaptation, but one can't deny how memorable this take on Frollo is. From the character animation to the deep vocal performance of Tony Jay, I still get literal chills every time he's on screen. Fun fact, Disney animator Kathy Zielinski worked on Frollo and even based some of the facial movements and some of the design off of Hans Conried. She even went as far as to model some of the wardrobe and clothing from some that were used in the 5,000 Figures of Dr. T, which Hans Conried was also in. So great. Every time I see this...
You're beginning to build up an immunity to my little hypnotic trances. I think you'd better spend tonight in your lock-me-tight.
I'll immediately think of this.
But I'm a patient man, and gypsies don't do well inside stone walls.
Thanks for ruining one of my favorite Dr. Seuss guilty pleasures, Disney! Other big changes involve the other two characters ported over from the novel. One being Phoebus, a captain of the guard, and Esmeralda, the kind-hearted... What the hell? I remember ordering a censor.
Sorry, Morgan, but once again, we must take high precaution for the sake of the future.
What? What did I do this time?
You said the word. No, not that one. The one before it. The G word.
G word? Really?
Yes, that one. Apparently, that word has been considered an offensive racial slur towards Romanian people since 1971. And of course, we must take great care to avoid any controversy or offend any viewer out there of this show, albeit old or new. So I took the liberty of installing an automated censor, or AGC for short. Trust me, it's pretty hard to avoid backlash anytime these days, so we must be always one step ahead to avoid such timely and unfortunate cancellation.
They let stand-up comedians get away with hot topic issues, and yet I can't say Censorship is far more f***ed up than it already is today. And even then, this movie doesn't even depict culture right. I understand the movie's message of don't judge one by their appearance, but a little of that gets somewhat contradicted. One moment they keep saying how are misunderstood, and yet later we see in their secret subterranean lair how they make a living. I guess one could argue they are resorted to begging and some thievery because of hard times, but still, I wouldn't say this is a perfect depiction of the lifestyle. If anything, the Subspecies trilogy or the Wolfman is more accurate of Romanian culture, and even they know such superstition is Bolshevik.
Vampire? What is this? Now you look at me. Do you think I'm evil?
No, you were kind and good and
And a gypsy.
Whoa, hold the phone, Dr. PC. You're not okay when I say the word but yet you leave the movie clips unbleeped?
Yes, sadly, one cannot alter the past. But yet, one can take a good step ahead to avoid such damage in the nearby future. After all, it's the scientific way. To take a step back instead of going through the door full blast.
You are one big Really? I can't even say
Not unless you're referring to Sissy Speck of Carrie.
Moving the on. Phoebus and Esmeralda are drastically altered, and for good reason. In the novel, it was a constant love battle that ended with Phoebus turning Esmeralda away. In this version, it's adjusted to fit the adaptation better. Instead, the two fall in love, and thankfully, it's well developed. I mean, they do kind of rush it a bit, but at least they have a conversation. Well, sort of.
You fight almost as well as a man.
Funny. I was going to say the same thing about you.
That's hitting a little below the belt, don't you think?
No, this is.
And yes, that is Kevin Kline and Demi Moore voicing these characters respectfully. Funny enough, when directors Wise and Toosdale wrote these characters as being Kevin Kline and Demi Moore-esque, producer Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was still at the House of Mouse during some of the production of this movie, piped up and said, "Oh, you want those performers for this movie? I can get them for you." And thus he easily did. I do like Kline's performance given his comedic background, so some of his one-liners do have some punch.
Great. I could use a drink. Feels like a 1470 Burgundy. Not a good year.
And the take on Phoebus does have a good character arc that shows he's the kind of guy who seeks the median of justice than just rather go for blind faith, which pays off nicely in the end. Esmeralda, on the other hand... Two things. One, Jessica Rabbit is shunned by today's parents, yet this is okay. Second, it's kind of ironic to note that just 1 week after Hunchback, Demi Moore would appear again as a bad girl with a heart of gold in the infamous flop striptease.
Look at that disgusting display.
Yes, sir.
Joking aside, I do like how her character is kind-hearted, but is not afraid to speak her own mind.
What do they have against people who are different anyway?
You can't right all the wrongs of this world by yourself.
Well, no one out there is going to help, that's for sure.
She's not judgmental and respects those who are good-natured. She knows how to escape a situation without purely being a damsel in distress.
There's 10 of you and 1 of me. What's a poor girl to do?
Excuse me! I'm gonna explode!
Okay, she has to be saved near the end of the movie, but when she knows how to get out of a jam, man, does she deliver an escape plan. Well, if it didn't hinder too much on Home Alone, slapstick logic, that is. But her animal sidekick, Jolly, scores some nice laughs. In comparison to...
Oh, man! I thought he'd never leave. I'll be spitting feathers for a week.
Oh, it's a lost cause! She could be anywhere, in the stocks, in the dungeon, on the rack. Oh, God.
Here, get away from me. Go on, you bunch of buzzards.
Yep. You know I had to get to this one right before the nostalgia break. When it comes to the 3 gargoyles, people tend to be pretty split on them. Some actually find them harmless and humorful, while others are pretty annoyed and find their antics obnoxious. Though, keep in mind, this was out at a time when comedic sidekicks like these were pretty popular with Disney. In the novel, Quasimodo did talk to the statues of the cathedral like they were his friends, so it does make sense to have that ported over here, even though the movie has it more fantasy-based. Originally they were supposed to be a duo named after horror icons Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. However, a third one was added in to balance between the two. So you had a John Belushi type, one that was more grounded in reality, and the third which was overly cautious. The one named Laverne was meant to be modeled after young Cyndi Lauper, but when that didn't work out, it was decided to make her crankier, yet a bit wise. I also heard they developed a background story for the gargoyles where they were originally unfinished statues that Quasimodo saved, which I would have been fine with. However, they couldn't find a place to fit in that explanation to happen. I don't particularly get annoyed by these 3. If anything, there are times when they get a tad irritating.
Oh, it doesn't look good.
It's hopeless, absolutely hopeless.
You're telling me I'm losing to a bird!
Mary Wicks's Laverne does have some good lines that are funny, and she gives a wise, grandmother-like presence that works for her character. Charles Kimbrough is alright as Victor, yet Jason Alexander as Hugo...
Pour the wine and cut the cheese.
I thought I was the cute one.
Hey, quit beating around the bell tower. What do we gotta do? Paint you a fresco? Give her some slack, then reel her in. Then give her some slack, then reel her in. Then give her some slack.
Knock it off, Hugo. She's a girl, not a mackerel.
Pretty hit and miss. Especially given how funny he can truly be in something like this.
You parked in a handicapped space. So what? No one ever notices, except the people who are supposed to park there, and hell, I can outrun them any day.
The idea is that Quasimodo imagines his wisecracking friends are real when they're just figments of his mind. This I can buy up to a certain point. One can analyze that these are part of Quasimodo's structure of personality, the id, the ego, and the superego. Given they're a part of his mind, they know the kind of advice to give and act as mental mentors. And at times in the movie, they do show that some of the things that happen only exist in Quasi's head. I'm honestly all for this idea. It helps to sympathize with the main character more. But no, this is a family movie. So when it appears the gargoyles are set to become stoned for the remainder of the climax, which I would have given major props to, what happens instead?
Fly, pretties, fly, fly.
Sorry.
Well, we gotta have something for the kids before the big, super scary villainous showdown. Oh well. Levusta Vedish. Whatever that means. Let's take a little break for now, and when we do come back, we'll take a look at the glorious, great operatic song work of Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz, and most interestingly enough, the love story you did not see on the big screen. Stay tuned!
Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame is in theaters.
Will today be the day? You're ready to fly.
And it looks like everybody's getting into the act with the puppets from Burger King.
Don't thank me. Thank Quasimodo.
Your kids can collect all four, only $1.99 each, with any value meal.
3 cheers for Quasimodo!
The Hunchback of Notre Dame puppets, only at Burger King.
Your cheating heart will make you weep. You'll cry and cry and try to sleep, but sleep won't come. Your cheating heart will tell on you.
If there was one thing that helped this adaptation of Hunchback of Notre Dame stand out from the previous entries, it can be summed up in one word. Music. Given this is a Disney animated musical, one would expect to have big, great, decent toe-tapping songs, as well as having moments where characters sing out their emotions. And thank goodness they got the right people for the job, or else this would not have ended well. Music writer Alan Menken and lyric writer Stephen Schwartz really elevate this version and present a song style that's different from the previous animated affairs. You had the Broadway feel of Beauty and the Beast, the Las Vegas and lively tone of Aladdin. Here, it's big, and dare I say, operatic. Yet you still have your fun songs, and the sidekicks get their comedy moment. But if you take those out for a moment, the rest of the numbers really do feel epic and enhance the drama. No matter how many times I hear the instrumentals of the opening tune, Bells of Notre Dame, I instantly get goosebumps. It's a great way to start out the flick. Out There is probably the standout moment given how relatable the lyrics are, and it addresses the I Want motif in a very beautiful way. I even like how it gets bigger and bolder as the song goes on, mirroring how Quasimodo wants his dream of social acceptance to be a reality. God Help the Outcasts I'm a little torn on. It's a good song, don't get me wrong, I do like the soft gospel feel. Yet if it wasn't for the visuals, I don't feel like the number would have survived on its own. In fact, for a short time, it was replaced with another song called Someday that would have been on the same tone as Out There.
Someday, life will be fairer, need will be rarer, greed will not pay.
Instead, it was decided to have a more quieter moment, and God Help the Outcast was placed back in. It's a shame Someday got the axe. Maybe it would have worked better as a song for Quasimodo given the nature of the lyrics. Still, it managed to survive and work successfully as an R&B tune performed by All for One.
On its way, let me come someday.
But it was more popular internationally with a cover by British trio Eternal, and a cover for the Latin American music market by Luis Miguel.
One day, someday.
This song really needs more love, man. It needs more love. If anything, this is probably the best way to segue into the one song everyone remembers from this movie, Hellfire. Often regarded as the best villain song ever written, yeah, they're very much right. No argument here. Frollo questioning his own desire against faith, the spooky imagery of the Reapers, the fiery hallucinations that nearly got Disney a PG rating. Yeah, all they had to do was animate clothes on the flame sprite and they still got a G rating. Who knew?
Full frontal nudity and hardcore sex. It's the filthiest Disney has ever gotten. It's absolute dirt.
Much like with the other songs, it starts quiet and just builds from there until it hits an operatic high. I still remember how quiet everyone was in the theater when this happened. You could literally hear a pin drop as Frollo sang about his horny confliction.
It's not my fault. I'm not to blame. It is the gypsy girl, the witch, who set this flame.
Oh, don't worry, Judge Frollo. You're not the only one who's having an issue with blue balls. Takamata over here has it about as bad as you do.
I put a spell on my manhood.
It's not my fault you can't love.
The other songs are okay. Topsy Turvy is fine and has a nice bounce to it. Guy Like You is very much this film's friend like me from Aladdin, and it just comes and goes. In fact, the only thing I kind of remember is that nod to Amadeus they put in, which is kind of cute.
They're all so beautiful. Why don't I have 3 heads?
Though, if I did have one major issue with this number, it's having it being placed right before the scene when Esmeralda brings an injured Phoebus into Quasimodo's room.
Was ever meant for heaven's love.
Never have felt such tonal whiplash since Ralph Bakshi's American Pop. Speaking of which, I'm kind of glad the love story is toned down here. In the novel, it was a centerpiece of the story, and it kinda got out of hand. In earlier versions of the Disney film, they tried to incorporate that, yet it didn't work so well. Originally, when Quasimodo and Phoebus ended up at the Court of Miracles, it would have gone from Esmeralda saving them from being hanged to Phoebus and Esmeralda getting married. Isn't that the equivalent of having an all-out war between humans and creatures and then just end it with a wedding? Again, tonal whiplash much. 2 different song ballads were written, but they ended up being discarded when the directors felt it was taking attention away from the story. One was called In the Court of Miracles, which was meant to have a good old feel to it. It's okay, but the lyrics are a bit too saccharine.
But now I can drop all disguise. When I see myself in your eyes, I know I'm in a place of miracles.
Attempt number 2 came in the form of As Long as There's a Moon, and while it's a little better, the sequence itself just doesn't feel appropriate given where it's placed in the drama of the story.
So, as long as there's a moon to wish on, so, as long as there's a song to croon.
Originally, we would go from a wedding to Frollo capturing everyone, and then we'd bounce to our big climax where Quasimodo saves the day and everyone rebels against Frodo's takeover Notre Dame. Having a love ballad sandwiched in there just wouldn't have worked. In terms of the movie's dark content, that is something pretty hard to measure here. One would argue that The Black Cauldron, Something Wicked This Way Comes, or Return to Oz is Disney's darkest. But I would probably say this is darker in comparison. Sure, there's fantasy elements here, but when you deal with real issues like racial inequality or genocide, you're gonna hit that center core of viewers who question how appropriate it is for all ages. As a movie about good versus evil, it fits the bill fine. Kids can understand what is right and wrong, as well as learn the difference between true love and lusting after someone without feeling it too heavy-handed. Hunchback of Notre grossed $100 million domestically, but it wasn't as grand as some of the others. The audience at the time was expecting Beauty and the Beast, and all I got instead was a thinking movie instead of escapism. It was a little too bold at the time, but maybe if it was released right after Lion King, it would have done a little better riding on that high of big, epic, operatic-style flicks, especially given the level of drama that The Lion King had. But no, it went from its Christmas theatrical release to the summer, so they could reshuffle some things once Katzenberg left the Disney studio. But honestly, if I was a parent in that time period and had the choice between exposing my children to that movie or what else is being released around the summer of 1986, Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame kind of doesn't look so bad when compared to these. I'm thankful to say this movie did better on home video, and since then, it's been growing a cult following with each generation. I'm glad to see people discovering it and really accepting what it is. Yeah, it's got flaws, but like most movies, not everything is perfect. It could have toned down the comedic elements, but it doesn't dwell in them too much. Hunchback remains as a bold risk-taker, but still beloved among many. Its themes of social and racial acceptance are still relevant to this day, and perhaps more so than they were back in 1986. It succeeds in the visual storytelling, and when it does work, it feels damn powerful. I do not regret seeing this one on the big screen when I was young, and while I didn't think much of it back then, I'm pleased to see it slowly becoming one of my all-time favorite animated Disney flicks. Not only do I see this as a high recommendation, but I would even go as far as to say, buy the Blu-ray. Visually speaking, it is perfect for anyone's big, high-definition screen. There's so much to marvel at, and it's so big, so episodically operatic that such beauty can't be passed by for any DVD collector. I know there is a musical they also did on the side more than once, one for the German stage, and one they tried to get on Broadway, which didn't go too far. And if you're looking for something a little more darker, I'd say check those two out. While fans of the novel will be completely biased, I still think there are some themes they will hold on to that made it a pretty solid adaptation. Not perfect by any means, but it's its own thing. I mean, a little variety doesn't hurt. Just as long as you avoid the straight-to-DVD sequel. In fact, I'd probably go as far as to say if you actually do buy the Blu-ray, just chuck the DVD of Hunchback 2 in the garbage bin altogether. It's less said the better. And yes, I know I've been hearing some back-and-forth news about a live-action adaptation, and I don't quite know how to feel about that. There's just so much to intake given how pretty complex and heavy of a movie this is in hindsight. You have the darker elements to consider, what to tone down, what to keep in, and how are you actually going to depict the culture. It's pretty tough to manage it on your own. But for now, for those who are adult, mature, and curious about a live-action adaptation, I would actually recommend Stuart Gordon's The Pit and the Pendulum. It's probably the closest thing we even get to a live-action Hunchback of Notre Dame. Especially given how the story is pretty beat for beat. And given its elements of faith versus power and gain. And given that the main villain decides to use that against all, and wrestles over lust, just so he could get this woman into this man's position, so he can get closer to her in a disturbing and literal sense. Not to mention Jeffrey Combs and his two stooges, whose comedy nearly mirror that of the Gargoyles, but it's actually executed much better. Wait a minute. What year did this movie come out in again? Huh. You know, given it takes quite a while for animated movies to get made, I'll chalk this one up as a coincidence. Thank you very much.
Hey, Morgan. Were you expecting something?
Oh, hey! Hey, everyone, look. It's Megan, the fanfic critic.
Actually, that's Susan now.
Tomato, tomato. And this is just in time. What you hold in your hand is the answer to who won the poll for the tiebreaker that we did a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, nice. I wonder what it is.
Well, I'm going to let you do the honors, seeing you're quite so eager. And while she chooses an end, let's take a quick look at the nominees.
Doll Man, 13 inches, with an attitude. Hell has no fury like the Dark Angel.
He could face any challenge, defeat any man. But there was one woman
I'll stab you through.
That redhead has a bite that stings.
he could never tame.
Janet, stop this!
Till fate made them partners
Get him, Joseph!
in a land far from home.
You guys had an entire week to find who is going to be the winner for the next episode.
I voted for Meridian.
Well, who knows? Well, here's where it gets a little more interesting. You see, I decided to make a little bet with myself.
Oh.
I decided to order a poster for the movie that I thought was going to win.
Oh, so we'll see.
So what you hold in your hand is quite possibly the winner. I'm going to get the results out in just a second.
All right. Shall I, or should I wait?
By all means. That's what it's there for.
All right. So this poster, if I can get this tape off,
I'll get the results
reveal.
up.
What did it? Oh, it opens up here. It's a good thing I'm not called the poster critic or the box opening champ. I would really be failing at this right now.
Did you review Lamps on another show? Oh, that's Linkara, never mind.
Oh no, not Lamps. I mean, Susan, before she became the new fanfic critic, did review sequels.
And it's full of packaging peanuts.
All right, here
Okay.
we go.
So don't open this just yet.
Okay.
So make sure, okay, so that's the top.
Which part's the top?
This little flappy right here. So don't open it just yet.
All right.
All right, so in between those four, let's see. No peeking. No peeking.
So you said this part right here is the top.
Exactly. So, okay. So let's take a look at the results. According to the tiebreaker poll, it seems that Dollman won. So if I am right, then what we hold here is the poster of that film. And if I'm wrong, goodbye $20.
All right, moment of truth.
Here goes
It
nothing.
is.
Ooh, this is beautiful.
Wow. Wow, you were right on the ball with that.
Never doubt the vibes. Ladies and gentlemen, next movie we're going to be...
If we can get this poster to cooperate.
All right.
There we go.
There we go, okay. They can just bring that down just a little bit. There we go. And maybe just like a little put it on. So there we go, just like this. So as you can see, it appears that the next movie that's going to be featured on Vaulting is Dollman by Albert Pune.
Awesome.
What an amazing pick. Tim Thomerson is a 13-inch cop from the future in Bronx, New York. Well, this is a grand reveal. I can't thank you enough for your help.
Oh, you're welcome. It wasn't what I voted for, but I will say this looks really interesting, so I'm happy to see this reviewed on your show.
Indeed. And would you like to do the honors for the sign-out?
Well, everyone, thank you for watching this. Do you upload weekly or monthly?
Bi-monthly.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching today's episode of Vaulting. We'll see. Well, he'll see you all in the next episode.
And I'm sure at some point you'll see us in the next upload, whatever that will be.
Yep, whenever that will be.
Go watch some good flicks, okay?
Bye.
Cheers.
And out there, living in the sun, give me one day out there. All I ask is one to hold forever. Out there, where they all live unaware. What I give, what I dare. I'll have spent one day out
You know, we've got to cast that obnoxious little gargoyle character. What's his name?
Yeah, Hugo. Oh
Hugo.
boy, I am out of ideas.
Jason Alexander.
I don't have a clue. What about that guy from Seinfeld?
Jason Alexander.
Yeah.
The talking about the funny hair.
No.
Yeah,
Michael,
the Michael Richards.
Michael
He's
Richards,
great. I
great.
love him. He's hilarious. He's great.
Jason Alexander. Jason Alexander.
But what about
Jason Alexander?
What about Jason Alexander?
Has he ever done one of these before?
I hear he's kind of desperate. He'd probably do anything.
Yeah, probably won't.
I don't think that's really